Hello there, and once again, we are getting together with our friends at Hightower Westchester. I'm Bob Marone for Westchester Talk Radio. And we're here today with Peter Lang. He's the Managing Director and Partner at Hightower Westchester. Today, we're talking about handling an estate. Tell us about your updated white paper. I heard you put together a white paper on this topic, Peter.
Yep, Bob, thanks. Always great to spend some time with you. So the history behind this, about 10 years or so ago, a client of ours who was also a really, really close family friend passed away, and his wife was simply devastated. They were married, they were teenage sweethearts, they were married forever. And I found myself going over the same things with her over and over and over again. And I don't mind doing that. That's part of my job and that's okay. But I thought to myself, there's got to be something I can give her, right? So I don't have to repeat the same thing as a reference for her, so to speak. And as I looked around online, I really couldn't find anything quite like what I was looking for. So I guess I decided that I would have to do something about it and I would just write it. This is a really stressful time in someone's life. So giving them this primer, I think, really kind of helps a little bit.
What makes this so complicated, Peter?
Well, Bob, I think there are a couple of reasons, right? It's not necessarily that it's so complicated, but there's just so much to process and to do. Now, first off, you're dealing, in many cases, you're dealing with the loss of a loved one, a parent, a spouse, right? And so you have all the emotional stuff to deal with, right? Which is a whole nother area that I'm not necessarily going to get into, but that often makes all these decisions even harder, right? Because you see the person kind of everywhere, so to speak. And then other times, the deceased may not have always left the best of instructions, and you don't always know where to find things and what to do. So there are deadlines that have to be met, and there are lots of decisions that have to be made, and you're dealing with grief, and it's just so tough. So again, by creating this white paper, we created kind of a source, a simple source that kind of has a whole bunch of different information that covers on many facets that you're dealing with in the estate process and in settling an estate and handling an estate.
Well, give us then the outline. Tell us what's in the white paper.
Okay. So, we start, like anything, we start with the very basics. Okay. So first off, who are the parties involved? Right. Obviously there's the deceased, but what about the other parties, right? There's an attorney, there's a CPA, there's the financial advisor, and there's also the executor, right? And he or she, or the trustee, he or she is the person that's been put in charge by the deceased to make all of these decisions. But the executor doesn't have to do it in a vacuum, and the executor needs to have this team of people, again, the CPA, the attorney, and the financial advisor. So we define what each of these people do in their roles. Next, we talk about the types of accounts that an individual might have had upon their passing. Individual bank accounts, brokerage accounts, retirement accounts, joint accounts, trust accounts. Each of these accounts has some different characteristics that need to be understood. They need to be understood when they were initially set up, and they need to be handled, some cases, slightly differently. I'll give you an example. We had a client of mine whose mother passed away a couple of years ago. She lived, she had two sons. One she lived very close to, and the other was across the country. She had a will and she had a trust, and everything was very, from what I saw, she was not my client. One of the sons was my client. And so she had set up a bunch of her accounts with joint accounts with her one son that lived close by. Well, the issue with a joint account, joint with rights of survivorship, is technically those assets go directly to the survivor, even though the intent of the money was to be split evenly between her two sons. So this has caused, kind of some issues between the two brothers. Again, they live 3,000 miles apart on different coasts. I think they get along okay, but it's taken a long time to settle what should have been relatively simple. And the son that lives close is trying to honor his mother's wishes, but in reality, he doesn't really have to. It's his asset. It's his money. So that's part of this whole process that people don't always understand. And sometimes through the best of intentions, I think in this case, the mom had the best of intentions. I think she created some unnecessary tension between her two sons.
Yeah, an unnecessary complication.
Yep.
That's very good information, and that can happen a lot. There are a lot of accounts, as you know, joint survivorship. Let's go forward now. What else is in this white paper?
So the next thing that we kind of cover are all the different type of document types that a person might have. So there's the basic will, which says, okay, when I die, this is what happens, right? There's a living will, which talks about, kind of your end of life care, healthcare proxy, which covers, who has the decision-making power. There are HIPAA form. We talk about what a HIPAA form is, which allows the doctor to talk to others about your medical issues. And then there's a power of attorney. And most of those other ones, with the exception of the will, are all, the living will, the HIPAA documents, powers of attorney, all expire when the person expires, but they're all documents that need to be understood as well. So, and they do make end of life issues easier by having those documents. We also cover documents, needed at death, which are a will and trust. One of the things we talk about, the basics is, when a person passes away, and you're dealing with the funeral home, ask the funeral home to get 10 or 20 copies of a death certificate for you, the original sealed death certificate with a raised seal. It's a lot easier to get them all at one time from the funeral home. They'll get them to you, usually within a week or two. And you may not think you're going to need them all, and they're going to cost, some amount of money for each official death certificate. Our experience is you end up using most of them over time because different places want originals. Some will take a copy, many will want originals. And then there are other court other documents like court appointments. When the executor is now appointed to handle the estate, there's a court appointment or letters of testamentary. Those are issued by the courts, but those also, they can take a long time to get. And they also generally expire after so many months, and you have to go back to the court to get new ones. And then the last kind of document to deal with, kind of the elephant in the room, if you will, is around the estate tax return. Estate tax returns are due 9 months from date of death. So it's not like April 15th, it's the person passes away and 9 months later, the IRS expects to receive the estate tax return. And any payments are also due at that same time.
Exactly what is involved in the estate tax return?
Well, an estate tax return is again, very different than the typical tax return that all of us file every year, hopefully by April 15th, right? There you're talking about your income and capital gains and losses and all these other issues. An estate tax return in its simplest form is a valuation of all of the assets that a person owned as of the date of death. Now, for instance, when you're dealing with financial assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, those are very easy to get valuations for, and we do that all the time for clients. And then there are things like houses, collections, other things that need to get an appraised value. Now, right now, under the current federal tax guidelines, any estate under about $11 or $12 million has no federal estate tax due upon death. Different states have different levels. So some states have no estate tax, some states have it pegged to the federal level, and some states have a different level altogether. So again, this is where the lawyer, attorney, and or CPA come in place. They know these things, these different nuances, so they can help you as the executor get it done. And then while all of this is going on, while you're preparing the estate tax return, the executor also has to make sure that the assets are being taken care of. Now, stocks or bonds maybe we'll say, easy to take care of, but what about the house, right? Well, someone needs to make sure that, the utility bills are being paid so that the pipes don't freeze and cause damage to the house. And if there's a going business entity, the business needs to be run, bills have to be paid, all those things have to be going on at the same time. And that ultimately is the role of the executor or the trustee has to get all of this done. So it's, sometimes you have a very quick, that this needs to get done quickly, right? You got to pay your utility bills. You don't want the utility company to turn off the power and have the pipes freeze in the middle of winter. So there's a lot of stuff that can go on. And sometimes it can take a long time. My aunt passed away about 18 or so months ago. And, I think they finally, my cousin, they finally sold the house in the late spring over the summer. And, with any luck, we're going to get the estate wrapped up before, the end of the calendar year that's, coming up upon us. But it's, again, even in this case, relatively simple, straightforward. It's still taken at least 18 to 24 months to wrap all of this up.
Wow, that's an enormous amount of work. Is there anything else involved? Do you have any last thoughts?
One last thought that I think we mentioned a couple of times throughout the white paper is don't make any decisions that can't be undone, right? Sometimes it's tempting just to say, let me just decide this and get it done with, and I just want to be done with it. But like, for example, if you have retirement accounts or pension funds, once you make that decision cannot be undone. So you need to, again, tap into the experts to make sure the decision you're making is the right decision and makes the most amount of sense. Because again, you can't redo those decisions. You don't get a mulligan on those kind of things. And the last thing that we've added to the white paper this time around is we've added a couple of checklists in there just to make it even easier to say, okay, let me just go down the list and let me just check off what I need and to get done.
So how can someone, a listener, a viewer, get a copy of this white paper?
The easiest way, obviously, they can always contact me through phone. They can call the office, they can email, or they can simply go to our website, which is, HighTowerWestchester.com. And they can go, they'll find a section where white papers and publications are listed, and they can just print out a copy. It's about 20 pages long.
Peter, I have to tell you, this white paper is going to be a lifesaver. It's really going to help people. I've been through this myself. I've even had the proverbial pipe, literally the pipe break in my mother's house because I didn't keep an eye on it. Thank you once again for this valuable information. Terrific. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome, Bob. Have a good day.
You too.
HighTower Westchester is a group of investment professionals registered with HighTower Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC, and with HighTower Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Securities are offered through HighTower Securities, LLC. Advisory services are offered through HighTower Advisors, LLC. This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. No investment process is free of risk, and there is no guarantee that the investment process or the investment opportunities referenced herein will be profitable. Past performance is not indicative of current or future performance and is not a guarantee. The investment opportunities referenced herein may not be suitable for all investors. All data and information referenced herein are from sources believed to be reliable. Any opinions, news, research, analyses, prices, or other information contained in this research is provided as a general market commentary. It does not constitute investment advice. HighTower Westchester and HighTower shall not in any way be liable for claims and make no expressed or implied representations or warranties as to the accuracy or completeness of the data and other information, or for statements or errors contained in or omissions from the obtained data and information referenced herein. The data and information are provided as of the date referenced. Such data and information are subject to change without notice. This podcast was created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of HighTower Westchester and do not represent those of HighTower Advisors, LLC, or any of its affiliates. HighTower Advisors do not provide tax or legal advice. This material was not intended or written to be used or presented to any entity as tax advice or tax information. Tax laws vary based on the client's individual circumstances and can change at any time without notice. Clients are urged to consult their tax or legal advisor before establishing a retirement plan.